forget about failure. Like if you're not failing, you're not trying.
What's the first step in starting a podcast?
Any take, any spin, any thought I have is unique because it comes from me. Don't think about 60 miles. Like that's too much. Think about 1 mile at a time. You have a formula that you know works with a certain person that will be successful. But if you do not have that formula, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it sticks. When I started my first business, I tried to go too fast. I tried to sprint out of the gate.
What are the things you must do, and what makes a podcast great, and what actually makes a podcast bad?
How can you extract knowledge that's valuable to the audience that you're trying to grow with? But the reality is the work happens in these rooms, one-on-one.
Garren, thank you very much for joining me today. I am at the time of recording a starting podcaster, so it makes all the sense in the world to talk to you. I from what I've read, from what I've seen, you're somebody that's it's a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope to learn a lot. But I hope our guests and our listeners or our viewers are going to learn a lot as well. You have a curious mind in front of you. I'm eager to learn, eager to also share my experience here from you. But let's start with the basics. Like, who's Garren? Introduce yourself, and let's get to know you.
Well, thanks for having me. First off, Sean, it's a pleasure, an honor. Anytime I get invited to a podcast, I'm like, man, is that where I'm at now? That's a marker for me. That's like, I feel humbled, right? That I've made it that far. And I guess it really takes me back to like my story started in small town Appalachia. When I was 14, my dad had a massive heart attack and thankfully survived, but it left our family in financial ruin. And that forced me really to grow up really fast. But it taught me resilience, and it taught me that how you show up when everything shifts in your life matters just as much as what you know. And that lesson really carried into my career. And years later, during the pandemic, which is a much longer story, I launched the company Riggg, my first real entrepreneurial venture. And the idea was to help professionals turn their home offices into high performance studios that didn't feel like a studio. And it really wasn't about fancy gear. It was about giving people confidence to lead and connect when the world suddenly moved onto camera. That experience paved my way for what I'm doing now, which is an homage. The name is an homage to Riggg, but it's called Riggg. And what we do at Riggg is design and manage full end-to-end production systems for large organizations all the way down to your individual content creators. So everything from live events and webinars to podcasts, video libraries, training videos, and virtual videos. But the key is that we're not just chasing polish, right? That polish is great, but the value is giving leaders and teams the ability to show up consistently, incredibly in an omnipresent world across every platform. And that means systems at scale, workflows that save hours of time, and production quality that builds trust instead of eroding it. We at Riggg, we help organizations stop wrestling with tech so they can focus on the story they're telling and the relationship that they're building. And most recently, funny enough, I'm going back to my origin story at Riggg, and I'm working on a company that I cannot tell you the brand name of yet, but it's really exciting. And what we're doing is taking that same philosophy, but bringing it down to the individual level again, kind of where I started, which is helping people control their on-camera brands no matter where they show up, from Zoom calls to live streams to podcast interviews. And at the heart of everything in my work is just about making change less intimidating. I think video and communication are only going to get more central. So my goal really is to make people and organizations have the presence, systems, and most importantly, the confidence to thrive in that shifting environment.
So, man, it's first and foremost, you got me curious about this new thing you're doing. But maybe I'll see if we can get something later. But I want to pinpoint on a few things you said. I absolutely love that you said, "Am I there? Am I the guy that's being invited into this podcast?" Well, first and foremost, you are. I'm going to just give you that credit. Yes, you are. And for me, like I said, I'm happy to be speaking to you because I want to know. I need to learn. I started podcasting for a personal reason, and then you could say there's a business reason, but that's going to be more for my YouTube channel, I would say. But keep this in mind. I'm 36 years old. I feel like I know a lot. I have people telling me, "Hey, Sean, you have a good voice. You should start talking. You should make a YouTube channel." And then I find out it's not that easy. It's like, it took me a year to get here because everybody is just so, there's so much self-doubt when it comes to producing. But let's start with the basics. I'd like to just start with from the guy that produces, from the guy that does, from the guy that teaches. Like, what's the first step in starting a podcast? Whether it's for a personal brand because you just want to get yourself out there, right? Not even corporate, but for yourself, or from a business standpoint, like where does it start? Where does the appetite start, and what's the best step to take?
Oh, great question. I think that the short answer is not equipment. It's not plan. It is believing that you already have unique qualities that make you valuable. You are enough right now.
Ooh.
That's really what it comes down to.
It is, yes.
One thing I had a hard time with when I started creating content was I thought I had to write something unique, think something unique. It had to be brand new, net new information that nobody had ever heard before, a take or a spin or whatever, that it was unique only to me. But then I learned that any take, any spin, any thought I have is unique because it comes from me, right? You're unique in your life experiences and the things that you've been through and the things that you've learned. You don't have to be a PhD or have a master's degree or any degree to be valuable to someone, because someone is where you were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's how you start.
I'm going to tell you something. This is, I think anybody that listens to this, and this is me also, because I'm a listener to you right now. This legit hits home. I wanted to do a podcast, but the thing is like, okay, Sean, but what do you have to contribute? And I think what I'm also seeing is that sense of not feeling enough is the thing I personally have struggled with a lot. And I don't think there's a lot of people that don't, but me personally, I can speak about my own things. I really struggled with it. But wanting to start a podcast and then thinking, okay, am I enough? That's one. The other thing I also came to mind is, as a creator, you want to be unique, right? So what's the angle? All right, but somebody has done this, somebody has done that. So I love the fact that you also said it's not about finding the unique idea. It's about you telling your story because you're unique yourself and telling it in your way. I applaud that. And it took me a long time to realize it. And I think once you can get over the fact that you're enough, is what I'm hearing from you, is you can actually start it. But what if there are doubts? Like, what if the doubt is too big? We know it's not equipment. And by the way, you're talking to a guy that spent a serious chunk of money to start, and not even to start at some point. I spent thousands of dollars just to get going. But what would be your golden nugget for someone who's like, hey, look, don't spend the money. What can they do? Like, what's the go-to?
Yeah. Don't worry about the outcome. Focus on the process. So anytime in my life that I've had doubt that I was enough, it wasn't smart enough, what I always defaulted to was like, I'm going to pull an all-nighter and I'm going to dig in and I'm going to build something. I'm going to do something that make people see that I'm enough. And through that work, through putting your head down and keeping your feet moving, one day you look up and you're like, oh, look where I've gotten to. It's like I'm a runner. And I think when you start the race, you're like, oh, how am I? I'm an aspiring ultramarathoner, and I have completed a couple ultramarathons, not many distances. But in the beginning, all of the coaches that I've ever had and all of the influencers that I listen to, they say, don't think about 60 miles. Like that's too much. Think about 1 mile at a time. You've heard this. You've probably heard this aphorism. How do you eat an elephant? And it's
Yeah.
one bite at a time.
Yep.
I'm
It's
not
nice but
unique
nice.
to that. Somebody else told me that. That's the same thing right here. But now I can see that because I've been through trying to eat an elephant and I've bitten off more than I can chew and it's choked me and I've had to start over. But now I learn like it's just one day at a time, one moment at a time, focus on the work, the process, fall in love with the process. Outcome will be there. The outcome will be there.
I think having fun is a big, like most people have put so much pressure on it that they forget that it's supposed to be fun. And I spoke to a colleague even today, and he's like, "How do I start? How do I start?" It's like, well, when you were 6 and you started riding your bike and you fell 10 times, you weren't like, "Hey," right? But I think the more you get older, the more danger you see on the roads, and the more like thresholds, the more reason you feel like no, 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 and we're so focused on the negative. So I absolutely love what you say. At the very start, right? Make sure there's this one sentence that keeps popping in my mind. There's this YouTube channel called Think Media, and every time they start a video, it starts with, "You gotta just press record," and I wake up with that every day, and that's what I'm gonna give to the viewers. Like, just press record, and I think, oh man, if I only did it earlier and just not let the fear creep inside of me or the doubts, bro. Man, we would have had 100,000 views right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but and yeah, but I think that there's nothing wrong with the journey. I do agree that pressing record is the first thing, right? And how many times have you had a thought, wanted to record it, press record, and you're like, I can't publish that. I sound so dumb.
Yeah.
And then you did it again, and then you did it again. You iterated, and you practice, and then now you turn the camera on and you can talk, right? That's what it's about. It's about the iteration on life and not being afraid of failure. That's that, and really, now that I say that, that's really the first step is forget about failure. Like if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And the funny thing is we know these things, and then when it comes, and we'll advise it to other people, but when it comes to ourselves, we're like, no, I'm going to choose not to believe what well, I'll tell somebody this, but to me, it's going to be bullshit. I'm not going to believe it. And it's so strange how the mind works, man. It is so strange. And I bet you come across this a lot of times. Is your core focus B2B? Is it also people that want to grow their personal brand like me, or just your average YouTuber? What's the focus? Like, who do you actually help the most?
Yeah. So the focus I've had for the past 5 years has primarily been on the individual with an aim to get to the enterprise and be able to affect more change over a larger portion of people. The more I work with large organizations, the more I realize I love working with the individuals.
Oh, that's
the people
surprising.
who I agree, but it's more personal. They have more control. You're able to move faster. There's less bureaucracy and decision making. So when you have an idea, an individual creator who owns their own brand can say, let's try it. Why not? So yes, you have less money available to you, meaning you're probably going to earn less money than if I went out and landed a deal producing podcasts for Facebook or Google or insert massive organization, which I think when you start, that's the goal because that's where the prestige is at. That's where people are going to see me as valuable. But the reality is the work happens in these rooms one-on-one. When I sold software, the progress was made in the one-on-one conversation, not when I was trying to sell a huge group of people. Right. So, at Riggg, we'll work with anyone. We have a handful of people who are individual content creators. We have agencies who have clients who have creators, and we'll work with a number of those people. But I mean, most podcasts, you don't work with 100 people. You work with one, you work with 2. co-host and a co-host, And so that's where my focus lies. Not to say that you cannot have scale inside of that, but I really enjoy the interpersonal relationships more than the focus on numbers. It's people over points, people over profits.
I hear you. And talking about podcasting, you mentioned like there's, you can have a single, you have a co-host, you have remote, you have physical. You started this in COVID, as you mentioned, right? The business, I believe, or pivoted towards it. So that was the time where a lot of people were just like, we had no choice. We had to do it online. You saw a lot of Twitch streamers getting big in COVID, a lot of YouTubers also getting big in COVID, everywhere on social media. And I think it sparked a lot of people's interest to say, okay, we have to have a presence. Also, digital age in general, but COVID really sparked it. Is there a difference of approach whether you have a virtual versus a physical podcast, or is there? Do you have to have a physical? Do you have to have a virtual? Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Like virtual versus?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, virtual is more accessible to the masses. Right? If we're able to create these awesome in-house studios, you don't need to travel as much. You can still create an experience for your audience that brings value. For the interviewer and the guest, if there is that type of budget available, being face-to-face and shaking your hand is never going to be replaceable.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Now, my business is not going to be focused, at least in the foreseeable future, on the physical podcasts, because there are limitations, right? There's huge limitations. And it's not even about the space of the equipment. It's about, I live in Tennessee and I want to be able to interview someone in Paris or in Singapore, right? Or in Amsterdam, right? And if we didn't have this, you and I would be like, well, I'll catch up with you the next time I'm in Amsterdam, or, hey, holler at me if you're close to where I live. So I don't think that there is a better. I think that it is just dependent upon your goals. And if your goal is to create value for your audience, then have a blended approach. Interview people that are local to you. Great. That's fantastic. That brings value. But if you also want a broader appeal, you need to be able to interview people who cannot travel to you.
If I've chosen myself a virtual podcast and my reason was very simple. Like, I love the fact that you can sit face to face with somebody, but I mean, I think in a podcast, audio is everything, right? I love the fact that people can see us on YouTube in the future, but the idea is if the audio is everything, and sitting down together creates great audio because you can control it. But nowadays, thanks to people like you, so many people have a good audio setup, a good setup in general. So the voice translates well. And that to me is just a big improvement and win for virtual. So to be honest, I'm virtual all the way. At the same time, I kind of feel like there's maybe some unfair prestige when it comes to a physical podcast. I was like, maybe that's in my mind, because when you're physical there, you're more important, or I don't know. Yeah, it's a strange thing, but
I hear what you're saying. No, I like that you touched on that. I think that's an important thing. And I think that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, and some of that fear and imposter syndrome of when you watch Diary of a CEO and they're sitting across from each other in LA. It does feel like I resonate. That resonates really deeply with me, that I do feel like when you're in person, it has it has this implicit feel that they have more money, they have more prestige because they are in a studio. But I don't think that precludes you or should hold you back from starting virtual, right? It shouldn't be a stopping point.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be honest, like the podcast I actually listen to a few of them, and oftentimes I listen to Joe Rogan, as the rest of the world. Specifically, if you're a podcaster, you have to sign a contract that you're going to listen to Joe Rogan, everybody. So, but one of the podcasts I listen to a lot is All In, and they just always convene remote, and it's just 4 screens, and that's the thing. Like, the audio is great, so like, I'm a guy that even likes to watch a podcast. Call me old fashioned. I have friends that listen to it. I'm like, how can you listen to it? Like, I don't understand. I can listen to music, but not to a podcast. I want to see and touch it and feel it a little bit. That's my thing. Um, but it speaks to the journey when you want to start as a creator, right? So what do you choose? Now, when we look at the fact of, hey, personal brand or even a business starting a podcast, I mean, there's so many benefits to our virtual podcast because you can invite so many more guests. Means you can actually create more episodes. You can, that to me is the extreme value, I think, with a virtual podcast, that anybody can start it, but also there's so much value that you can produce for your audience. And isn't that all what we want to do? Just create value, right? So
That should be the goal. That should be the goal. It's not about you. It's about your audience. And that's how real creators grow, is not focusing on their personal prestige and importance, but how can you extract knowledge that's valuable to the audience that you're trying to grow with. And I think too, you made a great point. And the word comes down to velocity, right? You're with a virtual podcast, you're able to create velocity in production that you are not able to create in person. And especially for someone like me, I live in rural Appalachia. I'm in the mountains. Nobody comes to where I live. Nobody important really, travels here. But if I live in an LA and Amsterdam, it would be a little bit easier to have that type of impact in person. But velocity is important. And I think I want to say one other thing before I lose this: listening versus watching. I think I have been toying with this idea for a while that podcast is just a distribution channel, right? Like I coach my hosts into stop thinking in terms of a distribution channel. Think about omnipresence. Think about, this age of multi-channel media where, yeah, it's on YouTube. You can listen to it when you go on the road. I can lay down in my bed, turn on my Google TV. And now, because I've subscribed to podcast, instead of going to Netflix on my home screen, it'll be like, watch the next episode of Diary of a CEO or All In, because I also follow them, or whatever. And I can click that and watch it as if it was a television show. And the experience that Google has curated for me through their tools, the hardware tools, is that to me, now I don't even see it as there's a difference between going to Netflix, opening up this portal, and then watching the things that they have curated for me. It's right there on my home screen from YouTube. And you have the ability to reach a massive audience. And that backs me up to another point, this whole Jimmy Kimmel thing, right? We don't have to talk about the politics of Jimmy Kimmel, but I thought immediately, so what the network canceled your show? Why not just make it a web show? And if your audience wants to show up for you, they no longer have to subscribe to cable to get your show.
And that's the freedom the internet gives you. The platforms like YouTube, Spotify, Apple, it's everything. Like the world is changing. And I think that's also something where you don't realize it, but there's a lot of people willing to create, wanting to create. And we spoke about the fears in the beginning. They still have that fear though. But it's the times are shifting. And based on that, so you talked, I want to jump back a little bit because I love the fact that you also mentioned the velocity, right? The fact that we can push out stuff. Now there's an opposite to velocity. And that is, or there's a negative sometimes, which is the faster you go, the shittier it becomes, essentially, right? We all know the term quick and dirty. So let's talk about a few things that make a podcast great. And what are the things that even though you have the luxury of going virtual and going at a higher speed, what are the things you must do? And what makes a podcast great? And what actually makes a podcast bad?
I think a focus, right, is what makes a podcast good. It's thinking about the way, I always try to think about what has been done for all this time. And not to say that we don't need to adjust and evolve, but what's been working, right? And what's been working is you have a niche, right? You focus on a niche, your audience wants extract a specific expected value from your content. They don't want to come in one day and hear about sports, and then the next day hear about politics, and then the next day hear about something else. It needs to be in a sense, a steady stream of the same type of content that I expect from you. And so, in your case, we're talking about media and podcasting and marketing. I'm guessing that is like marketing is probably the core focus of, a part of the core focus of what you're trying to extract out of your audience.
Marketing. Yeah, 100%.
Right. And so I'm an expert in this one type vertical. So I think it's really just a focus. I think that's what makes a podcast good. And if you dial in your formula, that's what makes a podcast good. When you first make a recipe in the kitchen for the first time, it might suck, right? But after you finally dialed it in, that you focus on your recipe, and that's what your audience, because I think an audience comes back because they know what they're getting. People like that. They know what to expect from you, and it's not a guess. So that would be, yeah.
That's the algorithm also, right? I mean, if anything, if anybody studies YouTube, the main thing is, and I'm pretty certain this is on Spotify as well, people will consume what they love and like, and the algorithm is meant to give them something that they love and like. So if your channel creates, what I heard you say as well, is if your channel creates content that is fragmented, right? One time we're talking about cooking, the other one talking about a sport or something else, it's not going to hit home to the same viewer that liked the first episode. So stay focused, stay in that niche, stay in your lane, basically. But you're good. That might be a little bit too harsh, but the thing is, you have to pick a subject, and obviously you're okay to broaden a little bit, but focus and build that journey. So when you're saying, let's get a lot of podcasts, let's get a lot of episodes, because we want to grow the business, we want to grow the brand, make sure your audience is going to actually love the content you create, I assume.
That's exactly right. I think that is the core focus of any creator, is to find, and it's what you love. I think that it's going back to finding that your stream is focused on the process, not the outcomes. The process is easier if you love it. The best soccer players in the world, their immediate outcome wasn't Ballon d'Or, right? It was, I want to go play soccer with my friends in the street. Like, let's go meet in the park and play ball. Like, and It was every day. It was a passion that then evolved into the outcome. And I think that's the same thing with content creators is, what are you passionate about? Don't make a show that you're not passionate about. You will burn out.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that leads to another question. Like, how many episodes do you think somebody should release on a weekly or a monthly basis when they start? Like, what's the advice rate to go?
Pick something you can be consistent with. That's my advice. So if you can be consistent at once a week, do once a week. If you can be consistent with twice a month, do twice a month. What audiences expect from you is every Wednesday, I can expect to see an episode from this person. Every other Thursday, I can expect an episode from this person. I think pick something you can just be consistent with.
I can agree with that, because there's every Saturday I wait for an episode of All In to come out because I know it's going to be released. Right. And you other YouTube channels which are not podcasts, but I know on a Monday they release one. So it's at some point your audience gravitates towards you and they actually start wanting to see your content. And that's where I would like to be, if I'm being truthfully. I don't care about the views as long as there's somebody waking up in the day and it's like, hey, where's the new Sean at? I want to see that one.
Yes. Yeah. And that will happen. All right. And the trick to that is longevity. One thing that I've finally learned is that it's a game of attrition, right? Who can survive the longest doing the thing? There are going to be people who pop up who feel hot, and you think, how did they get that traction so fast? And then they're like a burning flame. It just flickers out eventually. Yeah. If you stay around long enough, you see the arc and the cycle of the fireworks versus the slow burn, right? And I think a lot of times the folks who are slow burners, they see the fireworks and they have just deep envy.
Yeah,
I've experienced that myself, where I've seen people that are creators and I'm like, man, how are they
how do
getting
you
this traction?
why not me? How suddenly they blow up like this? I get you. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
I just started, so for I'm I'm yet to get jealous, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna happen. Because sometimes I also ask myself, like, come on, you just started 3 months ago. You have 20,000 subs. How is that possible?
There are always things behind the scenes you're not seeing. So it could be that person had a large audience on another platform. That person has a very large personal network. That person paid, and I'm not saying everybody does this, that person paid for the vanity metrics. When I started creating as a LinkedIn creator, um, I was deep in these circles, and then I started creating videos, couldn't get any traction. And then I heard, well, are you part of a pod? And I'm like, what do you mean part of a pod? What is that? What is this pod thing? And then I learned there's this whole community of pods of creators that, you put out something, I'll like your stuff. And then I put out something and you'll like, it's trading one for one. And that's I understand why they're doing it. But then I realized that's not how I wanted to grow. It didn't feel authentic and it didn't feel honest. It didn't feel like I had integrity by doing that. So I just went back to saying, I'm going to just let it burn slowly and win at the game of attrition.
But do you think it ever works, like buying viewers and buying people, like or like doing those types of deals? To me, it always feels like, yeah, it works in the short term. But you said a very powerful thing. It is the long game, right? It's the attrition. It is. So does that ever work? Or
That's a great question. I think the answer to that is yes, it does work sometimes. However, for someone who hasn't found their formula, it will not work. It will not work. If you know your formula, if you have intimate knowledge and understanding of your core unique selling profile, your unique audience, the person that you are talking to, and you have dialed that in to a T, then yes, you can game an algorithm, get in front of more people faster. And because you have a formula that works with a certain person, that will be successful. But if you do not have that formula, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it sticks. And at that point, you're spinning your wheels in mud.
So when you say formula, are there certain what's that formula made out of? Like, what are the things that you have to combine in this formula? And I think this is interesting for anybody wanting to start something.
So I think, when you think about going through a marketing exercise, you hire a consultant, you're a business and you hire a consultant, they're like, we need to find your persona.
Yeah.
Right. We got to dial that persona in, and you sit down and you do this whole exercise of what age are they? Is it male? Is it female? What things do they like? Quantitative and qualitative metrics. And then you go out and you test that hypothesis against some marketing data, right? You buy ads, you test that against that audience, and then you find out, well, that message, we thought this message was going to stick, but it was actually this message that stuck, right? You can pay to do that, or you can do it organically. So when I talk about formula, it's about finding the language, the person, their interests, understanding that person clearly. That's the formula I'm referencing, right? Is you have to understand your audience as if you were able to be them.
Yeah.
And maybe you are them. I think it's a lot easier typically to find an audience of people who you resonate with versus someone you're trying to resonate with, because then you're only emulating, and most people do not have that capability to get in someone else's mind.
Specifically when you're starting out, authenticity is maybe the core factor.
Oh, yes.
That's what I'm hearing from you, and that's why what I feel like validated. I had a few conceptions, right? before I started this entire journey. And one thing was, okay, which guy do I want to be? Do I want to be the, let's say, SEO guy? Do I want to be the AI guy? Do I want to be the developer guy? It comes with my background because I have a lot of skills, because I started at 13 with developing, 17 at marketing. So I've earned my credits, you know. The thing, however, is that I was like, who am I going to be? And then it's like, yo, but you're just Sean. So just, why don't you just start with something you love and you like? And then through it, you're going to find out what you actually love and like. Because a lot of people, you spoke about that formula, and a lot of people don't understand how difficult it is to get there. If you have an existing brand, yeah, easy. But if you don't, bro, and that's the thing I want to, that's why I'm so happy you're here. Because I need people to hear that it's just like you said, you're enough. And you should just try.
Yes.
And that's
be authentically you.
Yeah. And people don't, I'm talking about other people like I'm not part of that. I didn't understand it myself. I was like, yo, what's authentically me? I saw a guy crying in a TV series, so I had to cry on TV on the camera. It's like, oh, I have to cry this way, or I have to be happy that way because I'm mimicking somebody else. But I cried, I laughed, so I should be able to do my own thing. Just be you. You're enough. I love that. I really love.
That's a delta of age. You know, what you just said is wisdom that you do not have in your teens or in your 20s. And if you're blessed with that wisdom in your teens and your 20s, by all means, like I'm so happy for those people. But I don't think that early in life, we are as kids. I mean, what is it saying? Monkey see, monkey do, right? Kids, I'm a father, and I see my kids, they emulate me, you know, and they're testing and trying things that they heard on this YouTube video from this person at school. It's not who they are, but they're testing it out. And it's iteration, it's curiosity, and they want to see how that works for them. And it's not until my 30s where things came into focus of who is Garren? What is my identity, right? I didn't have this deep background with my family where I grew up, and all of my family was this one profession. So I knew I needed to do this. I was adopted. And so I didn't even have that blood connection to my family. And so, you know, I was always trying to figure out, like, inside of this small rural town that I grew up in, where everybody had an aunt or an uncle or a cousin, and you could point to them and say, wow, y'all look alike, you sound alike, and you act alike. I was just this black sheep. I felt this feeling. Maybe I wasn't, but I felt like this black sheep in my family and in my community because nobody looked like me. Nobody sounded like me. And I also felt like nobody thought like me either. And so I was constantly trying to conform to what my culture, my local culture, deemed as successful. And not until later, when I unfortunately extracted myself out of that community, did I have the solitude and loneliness maybe to develop who I was on the basis of my life experiences, and be able to look in retrospect at those things and say, okay, I see how that shaped my viewpoint, but that's not who I am either. It's a blend of those things. But I do think getting out of your bubble is really important. And I do think it is a delta of time, going back to my original point, to figure out who is authentically Sean. And I'm asking you, right? Who is authentically Sean? Right?
Only me. I'm the only person that is. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And that's
I struggle
beautiful.
in knowing what it actually is. I'll tell you that as well. Sometimes I don't even know what Sean would do, to be honest. And that's life, I think, is also. But
I think you're introspective. You're probably being, honestly, my perception is that you're hard on yourself in that way, because you have a desire to do something bigger. And so it makes you reflect on, am I just doing what they said I should be doing? And did I follow a career path because somebody told me it made good money, or the schedule was easy? Or did I follow a career path because I was genuinely curious about a thing that I was doing? Right. And I think it sounds to me like you're like part of this podcast is it maybe about finding who Sean is. Am I wrong?
100%. You just hit it on the head. That's exactly what this podcast is for. It's meant to, when I was 13 years old, I used to, I started as a developer and 13 years old, and I started helping people by just answering questions. And through that, I found my passion. And this kind of is partly, this is giving back, again, sharing my knowledge and also others, and helping potentially the next Sean. But at the same time, also figuring out like where does my passion lie? Like where does we do my, because through these episodes, you'll find your passion. And that's what I want to encourage everybody is to make sure, give it a try, go ahead and find yourself. And you're going to find yourself, you're going to learn a lot about yourself through this content creation process. As I pretty sure as a coach, as a, a person that does this for a living, helping people with this, I'm pretty sure you've seen a remarkable like reflection of people where they start finding themselves and saying, oh my God, and start having fun, right? That's the point. Let's have people have fun.
I completely agree. It's when you finally let go of all the preconceived notions of what it's supposed to look like and what are you supposed to sound like, you just fuck it. Like, just fuck it. Like, I'm just going to say what comes to my mind, what I feel on my heart. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to look at you right in the eyes and say, I was fucking wrong. That's okay. Like, I'm not embarrassed that I had a poor take and you had to help me correct that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Like, that is one thing that just drives me crazy about what is happening around me in my country is that it seems like people aren't willing to be wrong anymore. Like, as if being wrong or having the wrong take initially or the wrong perspective initially inherently makes them a bad person. Like, they tie those two things so tightly woven together that they're unable to disconnect. And as a result, they're unable to grow.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's in discussion. It's in self-reflection as well. Sometimes we just don't take a step or say something because we were feared we're going to be, no, we are maybe too different. But the answer is actually in your difference lies the beauty. Finding yourself is going to give you your difference. And, this is still supposed to be a podcast about podcasting right now. So if I take it there, imagine diving into this, doing multiple episodes or creating your own content and then realizing who you actually are and cultivating that more and more. The only thing it's going to do is grow your audience. So the answer lies in, as you mentioned before, it's starting, it's doing, and especially it's that process. And I think that's what we need to leave the viewers with. If anything, if you listen to this, you just cut out these 3 words, right? It's about the process, or however, how many words they were. I absolutely love that advice. Garren, in terms of business, like you started in during COVID, right? So that means about 4 or 5, well, sometimes it feels like 2 years ago. It's crazy. I think it's like 5 years ago, I would say. I started my recent businesses also during COVID, which were online. So I think we both had the benefit of having a lift off there. It is how throughout that, like any knowledge or any like mistakes you made that you want to make sure the rest don't make, or any golden nuggets that you want to share when it comes to starting your own business and growing your business as you have?
Yeah. Oh, we don't have enough time for all that. But I will tell you the immediate takeaways that I have in retrospect now. When I started my first business, I tried to go too fast. I tried to sprint out of the gate, and I wanted to, let's get a big team together and let's go seek investors and let's, become the next, whatever, insert, well-known company here. And I thought that was the path to success, because, and now looking at it, it was about my ego. That's why I thought I had to do that. And that was my need to prove that I was valuable, maybe to myself, but also to everyone else. And we talk about the focus on the process, right? So when that didn't work out, I had an existential crisis. And I thought over and over, I thought to myself, like, just give up and go back and get a job, because through a job, I'll be able to give my family a better immediate outcome, right? Financially, I'll be able to be more stable. I'll be a better father, a better husband, a better dad, or a better son, whatever, if I just had that income. And I didn't quit by the grace of God. And I just kept my head down and my feet moving. And I stayed curious, right? That's a big thing. Be curious. And everybody always told me, like, stay on the path, be disciplined, be on the trunk of the tree. Don't go out to the leaf. But the leaves is where I found enjoyment and joy. That's where I found going down the rabbit hole. Like, the rabbit hole is, when Alice followed the rabbit, her journey began. Her story was able to be told. Did she not follow the white rabbit? Follow the fucking rabbit. Yeah.
She found
follow
Alice.
the fucking rabbit, right? Like, don't allow everyone else's fear to keep you from following your rabbit. Is different than my rabbit. Now, I started with hardware. Hardware turned into coaching and training and learning about OBS Studio. And then that turned into Riggg, right? So then I went from, we were a hardware company to, well, now Desk Rig does three things. It's hardware, it's software, and it's, it's production. And then eventually I had people that I'd worked with 3 years ago, this is where wraps back around, come to me and say, remember that thing? Like, I want to partner with you on that thing. Like, not all three of those things, but that thing's interesting to me. Let's spin it off, right? So what Desk Rig initially was a hardware company, but what it really was my personal platform to explore my curiosities and turn those into projects, right? As they would say in the business world. And then those projects evolved into real businesses, right? An entrepreneur, I saw this post today. A business person buys and sells lemons. An entrepreneur makes their own lemonade, right? Like, and that's a very simple analogy, right? That's not, but you get what I'm saying there, right? You can still be in business for yourself, and that is entrepreneurship, right? But real entrepreneurship is having an idea of, like, what could we do with that lemon differently? It's having the curiosity to say, how can we change the status quo and create a different future and change
that's
things?
how you fight for your place of existence as well, or that's how you create your place of existence by like you said, follow your rabbit, follow your own rabbit. That's the only thing you got to do. And it's funny how life lessons reflect on business, reflects on podcasting. It's funny how at the end of the day, the distillation, I think, of all we spoke about today is indeed follow your rabbit. I mean, and it's going to take you where you need to be taken to. Garren, I had a lovely conversation with you. So this has been a joy, a blast, and we're going to have some good clips. I really appreciate this. I want to end off with, well, is there, like, where can people find you? Obviously, we know Riggg.com. Anything else you want to shout out or call out?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm basically in all the places. I have a different kind of take on each place. LinkedIn, I'm really focused on business, and my Facebook is a lot more personal and, even political beliefs. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, and my Instagram is pretty much like a lot of just like my personal life and my running journey, my ultra marathoning journey, and fitness journey in that sense. And so you can find me in all those places. And the last one I'll tell you is the new organization. It's going to be called, I'll tell you, that you'll be the first place that ever hears this. Okay, and I'm going to give this to you because you have given me, I think, maybe more in this podcast than I've given you. And I greatly appreciate that, because I didn't know what to expect in the beginning. But the company is called Look Sweet.
Look Sweet.
And be looking out for looksweet.com here in the next couple months. And you'll be hearing about that real soon.
Okay, perfect. Well, Garren Parkins, people, Riggg.com, Riggg with 3 Gs, and looksuite.com. Garren, it's been amazing. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to having you on the pod soon again. Thank you very much.